Iran digs its own grave by launching missiles against Israel and calling for a response that could cost the regime dearly. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard put the Middle East back on alert after firing ballistic missiles at northern Israel Sunday night, June 7th, with direct repercussions on Monday, June 8, 2026. The attack came after Israel struck areas linked to Hezbollah in the southern suburbs of Beirut, Lebanon. And it showed once again the same logic of the Tehran regime, to provoke, to hide its weakness behind threats, and to try to push Israel and the United States into a total war, before the noose tightens even more. War with Iran is back because the regime chose missiles, chose escalation, and chose to test the patience of those who had already been preparing a calculated response. What did Tehran try to hide? Why did the Revolutionary Guard launch the attack? How can Trump and Israel turn this provocation into a brutal response? I'll tell you all about it in a moment. If you like this kind of straightforward and no-nonsense content, consider subscribing because we have videos like this every day. The new crisis began when Israel attacked targets linked to Hezbollah in Beirut after shots were fired at northern Israel. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard treated the attack as justification to launch a barrage of missiles against Israel. The Iranian regime called this retaliation. But what lies behind the propaganda is simpler. Tehran is trying to protect Hezbollah, keep pressure on Israel, and prevent the American and Israeli operation from continuing to suffocate its allies in Lebanon, the Gulf, and within Iran itself. The missiles were launched from areas in Iran and mainly targeted northern Israel. Sirens sounded, civilians ran to shelters, and Israeli air defenses sprang into action. In the first wave, most of the projectiles were intercepted or fell in open areas without producing the result that Tehran was trying to sell to its base. The regime wanted to show strength but exposed its limits. It wanted to show capability but saw Israel absorb the blow and prepare a response. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard did not just launch an isolated attack. The group stated that the attacks could continue for a week with waves of missiles and drones. This threat reveals the size of the risk. When a military force announces new strikes even before measuring the impact of the first attack, it is trying to create psychological fear, force negotiations, and confuse the adversary. But Israel interpreted the move as an attempt to change the rules of the conflict. The statement within the Israeli command was clear in the political sense. The Iranian regime made a serious mistake by trying to impose a new cost on Israeli territory. Israel responded by hitting military targets inside Iran. The offensive reached structures in western and central Iran and also hit the Macha petrochemical complex in southwestern Iran. This point changes the weight of the crisis because it's not just about intercepting missiles in the sky. If Tehran tries to set Israel on fire, Tehran also starts to feel the impact at home. Trump appears at the center of this crisis because he had been trying to keep negotiations with Iran open, without giving money, without easing sanctions for free, and without allowing Tehran to buy time just by talking about an agreement. The President of the United States pressured Netanyahu to avoid an out-of-control response, but also made it clear that Washington is in charge of the pace of negotiations. For Trump, the Iranian attack cannot become a reward for the regime. The strategy is to hold back escalation when it favors Tehran, but to keep up the pressure when it forces the regime to negotiate from a weak position. That's where the Revolutionary Guard's attack becomes a trap against Iran itself. The regime wanted to drag the United States and Israel into a full-scale war because a total war helps Tehran hide internal conflicts, unite the regime's factions, and sell the idea of national resistance to the population. But the most dangerous response for the Ayatollahs might actually be a combination of precise military strikes, blockade, economic pressure, and political isolation. Without a chaotic spectacle, without giving the regime the conflict it wants to use as a shield. The closure of airspaces, the reported explosions in Iranian areas, and the state of alert in Israel show that the crisis has moved from the realm of threats to the realm of action. Schools have been suspended in Israel, public gatherings have been limited, and the population is once again living with sirens and shelters. At the same time, in Tehran, supporters of the regime took to the streets to celebrate missile launches that, for the most part, did not produce the promised effect. Hezbollah is also at the center of this equation. The group operates in Lebanon as an armed wing linked to the Iranian axis and had been putting pressure on northern Israel. When Israel targets Hezbollah positions in Beirut and southern Lebanon, Tehran reacts because it understands that the loss of Hezbollah reduces its ability to threaten Israel without appearing directly. The Revolutionary Guard entered the game to save face for its ally and to try to force Israel to pull back from operations in Lebanon. But Iran's direct involvement only increases Israel's justification to strike at the heart of the Iranian machine. The crisis also puts pressure on the negotiations led by the United States. Tehran wants sanctions relief, access to frozen funds, and recognition of its influence over strategic routes. Trump wants to prevent Iran from advancing toward a nuclear weapon and wants to reopen the path to negotiation without giving the regime an advantage. Sunday's attack creates problems for both sides, but it weighs more heavily against Tehran because it shows that the Revolutionary Guard uses the negotiating table as cover while preparing new waves of missiles. The oil market felt the shock. Brent crude went back above $97 a barrel after the new exchange of attacks, showing that the Iranian adventure doesn't affect only Israel. Netanyahu is under pressure from internal groups demanding a strong response, while Trump tries to control the pace so as not to allow the Revolutionary Guard to choose the battlefield. This tension between response and calculation will be decisive in the coming hours. The Iranian regime tries to sell an image of courage, but the sequence reveals desperation. Those who are secure don't need to turn every missile into a parade. Those who control the crisis don't close airspace, activate defenses in several cities, and put their economy at risk of new blows. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard tried to create fear in Israel, but opened the door for Israel to attack more sensitive sites in Iran. The brutal response doesn't have to come in just one night. It can come in layers: military targets hit, air defenses dismantled, strategic infrastructure under pressure, Hezbollah cornered in Lebanon, and Tehran forced to negotiate without the comfort of blackmail. That's the point that scares the regime the most. Total war may even produce strong images, but continuous pressure corrodes from within. Trump knows this, Israel knows it too, and the Revolutionary Guard is trying to break this plan before it reaches the point of no return. I'm Milson Alves Global, and my purpose is to keep you well informed with the truth every day. The news links are in the video description. Like this video, subscribe, and check the comments at the end to stay engaged with the Milson Alves community.